أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا. وأعوذ به من شر نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين. صلى الله عليك سيدي ومولاي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك يا نبي الله. صلى الله عليك وعلى ابن عمك أمير المؤمنين. صلى الله عليك سيدي ومولاي يا أبا عبد الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. من المؤمنين رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه فمنهم من قضى نحبه ومنهم من ينتظر وما بدلوا تبديلا. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the purification of the souls, the enlightenment of the hearts, for the hastening of the reappearance of Baqiyatullah al-A'zam, Ruhi wa arwahul alameen lahu al-fida, enlighten your souls and the atmosphere with the recitation of salawat upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. He was one of the most well-known servants of Amir al-Mu'mineen, a man beloved to the commander of the faithful and to the Ahl al-Bayt, a man who dedicated his life towards the service of the commander of the faithful, and an individual who died and gave his life in honor of the love of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Qanbar ibn Hamdan, also known as Abu Hamdan, was one of the most well-known servants of the commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. In many occasions we hear the name Qanbar in the idea that when sometimes stories of the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen are mentioned, the name Qanbar is referred to. Qanbar is a well-known figure in some circles, but in other places he may not necessarily be the case. In that you find, when it comes to the illustrious life of Amir al-Mu'mineen, there are certain individuals who recognize his excellence and his status. These people recognize the importance of being one of the followers of this honorable individual, and therefore they associated themselves with the commander of the faithful. You have individuals like, for example, Malik al-Ashtar, who used to say that I am to Ali ibn Abi Talib what Ali was to Rasulullah. You have, for example, individuals like Uwais al-Qarani, Radwanullahi ta'ala alayh. Uwais al-Qarani attained martyrdom in the Battle of Siffin, and was a man who refused to come to Kufa or to come to Medina during the Khilafah of the first 3 Khalifs, although the Prophet said that he was one of the people of Jannah, he only came to Kufa at the time of the Khilafah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, pledged his allegiance to him, stood with him, was a close companion to him, and attained martyrdom in the Battle of Siffin. And therefore you recognize that Qanbar, before his association with Amir al-Mu'mineen, was not necessarily well known, neither would he have had any legacy in his life. One idea that emerges is the very fact that he loved the commander of the faithful. Imam Muhammad Al-Baqir alayhi salam says, كان لعلي غلام اسمه قنبر يحبه حبا شديدا. Ali had a servant by the name of Qanbar who loved Amir al-Mu'mineen excessively. And indeed, this excessive love from Qanbar is a demonstration of his loyalty, because one day it is said that Amir al-Mu'mineen left the house at night. All of a sudden he heard someone walking behind him. He turned and said, "Who is this?" Qanbar said, "It is me, O master, I am following you." Amir al-Mu'mineen said, "Why are you following me?" Qanbar said, "I wish to protect you." He said, "Are you protecting me from the people of the earth, or what will happen from the heavens?" He said, "I'm protecting you from the people of the earth." He said, "Don't worry, only that which Allah has written for me will happen to me on this earth." This is a recognition of the excellence of this person. But when you look at the lives of all the A'immah, as well as the Holy Prophet and Lady of Light Fatima, peace be upon them, you recognize that they paid attention towards the training and the schooling of whom? Of servants and slaves. Meaning back in the time, the idea of servitude or to have slaves was common. And this was part and parcel of society. It was something that society, especially in Arabia, was very much built on. And gradually Islam developed a system of emancipation, meaning the freedom of these slaves would gradually be given to them after they would be looked after they'd be honored, after their rights would be given to them. And when you examine the lives of the 14, you find that many of them had servants, but these servants were inspired. They were individuals who were mesmerized by Ali Muhammad. You start from the Holy Prophet Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He had a servant by the name of Zayd ibn Haritha, who was gifted to him by his wife Khadija. Khadija, when she gifted Zayd, Zayd looked at the character and the personality of Rasulullah and he loved him, to the extent that his father later, whose father? Zayd, came to Mecca. And what did he do? He demanded that the Prophet hands him over his son. The Prophet said, "Very well. If Zayd wants to go back to you, I will free him and he can go back to his father." His father came to Zayd and said, "Zayd, I'm your father, please come back to me." He says, "How can I come back to you and I have discovered Muhammad? How can I come back to you and I feel the sweetness of Rasulullah? I will stay with the Prophet. That's my choice. I will stay serving the Prophet rather than coming back to you." And this was a recognition of how these people saw these holy individuals. They saw them as their fathers. They saw them as their teachers. They saw them as inspirational role models. Similarly, Amir al-Mu'mineen had a number of servants. One of them was Maytham al-Tammar. Maytham was somebody who used to sell dates. And one day Amir al-Mu'mineen saw him. When he saw him, he said to the person who owned him, a lady, "I want to purchase this slave." The lady said, "How much would you pay?" He said, "I'll pay 100. She said, "More." "I'll pay 200, more," until he reached 600, which was an excessive amount to pay for a slave. The companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen said, "This man is exceptional. Why are you purchasing him in such an amount?" He said, "Don't worry." When he purchased him, he said to him, "What is your name?" Maytham would say to him, "My name is Salim or Salim." Amir al-Mu'mineen said, "No, your name is Maytham." The man said, "How did you know?" "No one other than my mother knew my real name." He said, "Don't worry, you will discover many things that you don't know that I know." Yes? Later on, what happened? Maytham would be told by Amir al-Mu'mineen, "How would you be like when you will be asked to dissociate yourself from me?" Maytham said, "I will never do so." He said, "Very well, you will attain Shahada." And that's why when Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad came and said to Maytham al-Tammar, he said to him, Maytham, are you one of the followers of Ali? He said, yes. He said, I want you to dissociate yourself from him, bara'ah from him. He said, never. Ali is my master. I will continue with his path. He said, then I will punish you. Maytham said, don't worry. My master Ali told me, because Maytham had ilmul manaya wal balaya, the knowledge of what will happen in the future and the calamities that will befall individuals. He said, I know what you will do to me. Ubaidullah said, what will I do to you? He said, you will place me and crucify me on a tree and you will eventually kill me. Ubaidullah said, very well, I will not do this so that I prove your master wrong. I'm not going to do it. Maytham said, let's see. Maytham was placed in the prison. With him was Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. Yes. In the prison, Maytham began to speak the fada'il, the virtues of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And Ubaidullah heard this. He said, take him out, place him on a tree. Crucify him on a tree. When he was placed on this tree that Maytham loved because he used to speak to it and say to it, I have been created for you and you have been created for me. He was placed there, what? In order to be punished. But he began and he continued to speak the virtues and the excellence of the commander of the faithful towards the people until they plunged what? They plunged a spear down his neck to come out this way, and they cut his tongue and he attained martyrdom. These are the individuals who understood the sweetness and the elixir of the love of whom? Of the commander of the faithful. And no doubt one of them was Qanbar. Indeed, when you and I recognize the status and the life of these holy individuals, we can appreciate how to follow in the footsteps of not only them, but also our Imam, the commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'mineen, peace and blessings be upon him. In that, if I want to understand Ali ibn Abi Talib, I need to understand those around Ali ibn Abi Talib. I need to appreciate those who understood who Amir al-Mu'mineen was. We have a narration that on the day of judgment in Jannah there is no sun. There is no light coming from the sun. And so what happened was that in the narration it says there is no sun on the day of Qiyamah in Jannah. Yet people in Jannah, what they see is they see like a sun that is emerging. All of a sudden they ask, what is this? What is this light? The narration says that the people will be told, this is the smile of Ali and the light that comes out from his mouth when he smiles in Jannah. And that is some indication of how these people recognize the status of the commander of the faithful on the day of judgment. When you examine Qanbar, you begin to appreciate the excellence of the Imam. Therefore, I would like to look at the life of this individual who, Qanbar, the servant of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why? Because today you will not find books about him, you will not find lectures about him. In fact, many of the people who are non-Arabic speaking have misspelled his name. I was looking online, I saw many people placing his name as Qanbar with a meme, with a M. His name is Qanbar with a noon, with an N, not Qanbar, yes? So, in recognition of his status and in order for us to be inspired by the life of the Amir, I would like to look at this man. And importantly, what did he relate to you and I as far as the legacy of the commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'mineen wa Mawla al-Muttaqeen wa Qa'id al-Ghurr al-Muhajjalin, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. As with many individuals in history, there is no recognition or recording of their date of birth. We do not know. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We do not know of the date of the birth of this individual. However, because he was martyred in the year 95 after Hijrah, according to narrations, and he was 75 years of age, it's likely that he was born in the year 20 after Hijrah, or perhaps a few years earlier he was born. Yet, not much is known about his fairly early few years, except that what? Except that he was purchased by Amir al-Mu'mineen. And that is where his life began to emerge. And that is importantly the first lesson that you and I need to understand. Because sometimes certain individuals, their lives transform when they associate themselves with a person who is godly. That is how we view certain individuals in history. Not because of who they are in reality, but because of their association, their principles and values. For example, you have the son of Prophet Nuh. He is the son of a prophet, yes? Quran tells us, Nuh would say to Allah that he is my son. How is it that he's being punished? Because he drowned, he did not join Nuh's ark. Allah says to him, إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ مِنْ أَهْلِكَ إِنَّهُ عَمَلٌ غَيْرُ صَالِحٍ. Allah says to Prophet Nuh, don't worry, your son is not really your son in the sense of the association of principles. Yes, he's your biological son, but he is not from your family of religion as such. Why? Because of his vice, because of his actions. Whereas you have, for example, Salman Al-Farisi Al-Muhammadi Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayh. Salman would be called by Rasulullah what? Salmanu minna Ahl al-Bayt. Salman is one of us, Ahl al-Bayt. Why? Because of his stance, because of his dedication and his commitment towards the path. Qambar's life completely changed when he was taken on by Amir al-Mu'mineen. And he was known as his doorkeeper. Doorkeeper means what? Somebody who opens the door when someone knocks on the door of the house of the Imam alayhi salam. Number one. Number two, Imam sent him on important missions. He sent him on important tasks. For example, when the third Khalifa Uthman ibn Affan was being attacked, Amir al-Mu'mineen sent who? Sent Imam al-Hasan and Qambar to defend Uthman, according to some narrations. Yes? He sent him to defend the individual from the attacks of certain people. And it's ironic that later another group of people would come, hold the shirt of Uthman and demand from Ali that he releases the killers, or say that he was complicit in the murdering of Uthman. Whereas Amir al-Mu'mineen tried to save the life of the third Khalifa. And one of the people who tried to do this in the commands of the Imam was whom? Was Qambar. Similarly, after the Imam alayhi salam assumed the Khilafah, we are told that Qambar was an individual who was given the treasury in Kufa. The treasury, Imam alayhi salam said to Qambar, you look after it. He didn't say, oh, by the way, you're a slave, you're someone who without any necessarily background or lineage. No, Imam recognized that Qambar had important qualities. He says to him, I want you to look after this. In the battle of Siffin, Imam gave him a flag. He was one of the flag bearers. And Qambar would kill Harb, one of the slaves of Muawiyah, in the battle of what? In the battle of Siffin. Similarly, what do we find? We find that Qambar was known as one of the Shurtatul Khamis or Sharatatul Khamis. Please understand this term. This is a group of people, several thousand of which pledged that they will give their lives for Amir al-Mu'mineen. Whatever happens, they will sacrifice their life for Ali ibn Abi Talib. Meaning what? Meaning that they had utmost loyalty. They were individuals who were trained, who were developed, who had military know-how. They were who? For example, Maytham. For example, Ammar ibn Yasir. For example, Abu Dhar, Asbagh ibn Nubata, Uwais al-Qarani. Qambar was one of them. Sharatatul Khamis. Amir al-Mu'mineen would say, he would be proud of them because they would want to defend him at any cost. They would stand to honor the maqam and the position of the commander of the faithful. And they would sometimes execute certain criminal punishment in that particular time. In which way? We are told that, for example, certain individuals committed certain crimes, and under Islamic law at that time they were deserving of certain punishments. For example, once an individual committed a certain crime and he had to be lashed. Amir al-Mu'mineen said to Qambar, lash him. And Qambar did it. But he was slightly carried away, or maybe he forgot how many lashes. He was to do a certain number. The narration doesn't tell us how many. But he got carried away and he lashed him 3 times more. He added 3 extra lashes to this individual. When Amir al-Mu'mineen heard, he called that man and he called Qanbar and he said to that man, now you lash Qanbar 3 times. It's not about who it is. Justice will have to take place. And Qanbar says, that's the only time that I remember Amir al-Mu'mineen being upset with me. Yes, because of what I did in that particular place. And that's why his association with Ahl al-Bayt, with the Imam alayhi salam, with Imam al-Hasan, with Imam al-Hussein, with Imam Zayn al-Abidin, peace and blessings be upon them, this association was something that he would be proud of. And later on, people would honor this association. Because there is a man by the name of Ibn Sikit. Ibn Sikit was a teacher at the time of Mutawakkil al-Abbasi. Mutawakkil was a wretched man. Mutawakkil was an Abbasid caliph who despised the Ahl al-Bayt. Mutawakkil hated Amir al-Mu'mineen. Mutawakkil used to mock Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidatun Nisa Fatima. We are told that one day Ibn Sikit was told by Mutawakkil, I want you to go and teach my sons. I want you to go and teach my sons and educate them Quran and Islamic studies. So later, someone came to him and said to Mutawakkil, by the way, you know this Ibn Sikit? He loves Ali. He loves the Ahl al-Bayt. Mutawakkil summons him. He says to him, I ask you a question. Who is more beloved to you, my sons or the sons of Ali? Ibn Sikit looks at him and says, you know Qanbar, the servant of Ali? His sandals is better for me than your sons. The sandals of Qanbar are more honored for me than your sons. Do you know what Mutawakkil did to Ibn Sikit? He chopped off his tongues and later he was martyred. Yes. Such is the path of individuals who recognize the truth and associated themselves with the glorious progeny of the Holy Prophet. Qanbar was indeed one of them. He would not dissociate himself in any shape or form from the remembrance and from the following and from the association with the commander of the faithful, and loved him immensely and would speak to him or speak to people about whom? About the brilliance of the commander of the faithful, his attributes and his characteristics. That's why I would like to look at Qanbar, what he said about Amir al-Mu'mineen. When you look at him, you need to understand a man who is so close to Amir al-Mu'mineen would be able to shed light on some of the qualities of the Imam alayhi salam in order for you and I to apply it in our lives as we honor the 3 nights of his martyrdom and be able to pray to Allah to follow in his footsteps. In order for me to be able to look at myself and say that I am a true follower and a Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen, I need to no doubt be the individual who calls themselves a muttaqi, because my Imam is the Imam of muttaqeen, isn't he? That when I call Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam al-Muttaqeen, I should be one of the God conscious, so that he is my leader. Let's look at what Qanbar was inspired by as far as Amir al-Mu'mineen, and how does that apply to us today. I would like to look at 3 areas. 3 areas of significance and importance that Qanbar recognized that Amir al-Mu'mineen was exceptional, that he indeed had excelled. And there are more areas, no doubt, but these stood out in the life of Qanbar, and at least the narrations that come to us involved these 3 main areas. After these 3 areas, I will discuss why Qanbar was not there on the 10th of Muharram with Aba Abdullah in Ashura, because he was still alive. People ask the question, if he was so good, why didn't he fight with Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam? And how he obtained martyrdom is of great importance. The first area that this honorable individual was mesmerized by Amir al-Mu'mineen is morality. In which way? Today, you and I recognize that ethics, akhlaq are of great importance. That when you hear about someone, and for example, you know them but someone doesn't, what do you say to that person? When someone comes to you and says, do you know person X? Do you know Ali, Hassan, John, Mark, Matthew? You say yes. That person will ask you, what? How are they? What kind of a person are they? Yes? Normally they don't ask you how tall they are, or they don't want to know their facial features, Or they're not really as much concerned to start off with of how wealthy they are. They ask you, are they a good person? What do you think about them? Are they nice? Yes? And often morality and akhlaq is the barometer and the feature by which people are identified, in which people are generally known. That is why Allah, God the Almighty, when He revealed the Quran, when He sent the final and the greatest of messengers, He identified the Prophet of Islam as what? As having sublime morality. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You have excellent morality, standards by which human beings should seek to emulate. Yes? In the recognition that you and I need to develop ourselves in our lives and seek to correct some of the ethical traits, principles that we may have not necessarily understood in our lives and become a better individual. The Prophet of Islam says the month of Ramadan is one of them. Yes. He says the month of Ramadan, if you and I correct our akhlaq, it will make the sirat, the bridge to akhirah, much firmer. This bridge towards Jannah, it's slippery for some individuals. It has 50 stations. And we are told when an individual perfects and works hard to improve their akhlaq in the month of Ramadan, that bridge will become what? That bridge will become much more stable for them on the day of judgment. Qanbar would say that I saw from Ali ibn Abi Talib a number of exceptional moral lessons that he narrates that are of great importance to you and I. Number one, generosity. He says, one day I was with the commander of the faithful and we were traveling, and Amir al-Mu'mineen had a number of camels carrying a number of goods. He was bringing them. One of the camels was carrying food. He says, we passed through an area where there was a poor man. He came forward. This poor individual said to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he said, Ya Ali, please give me some food. I am in need. Amir al-Mu'mineen looked at Qanbar and said, Qanbar, give him bread. Qanbar said, I began to look for bread within where the food was, but I took slightly longer than usual. Amir al-Mu'mineen said to me, why are you delaying? Why are you taking so much time? I said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I can't find the bread, but I'm looking for it. Imam says, don't worry. Give him the camel that has the food, all of it. At that moment, Qanbar realizes that he has to do this. Now he's looking for the camel that has the food. He's searching, there are a few camels. Amir al-Mu'mineen says to him, why are you delaying? He says, Ya Ali, I'm looking for the camel with the food. He says, give him all the camels. All of a sudden, Qanbar pulls the camels and gives it to the poor person immediately with no hesitation. Amir al-Mu'mineen said to him, how come you are not delayed now? He said to him, Mawla, I was told to give bread and I was delayed. Then you said, give the whole camel. Then you had told me to give the whole camel and I was delayed. Now you say, give all of the camels. I'm afraid that if I don't hurry up, you'll give me up as well. Yes? I want to give this camel all the them quickly because of your generosity. One after the other, you're giving for the sake of Allah. Yes? We are not surprised about the karam, the jood, the sakha. These are important Arabic terms. All denote to what? To generosity of the Ahlul Bayt. Peace and blessings be upon them. And no doubt, generosity is a feature that it has to exist within the human being, especially the believer. You know why? Because sometimes you have people who are generous and you have people who act as generous. What does that mean? You have individuals who've taken generosity as their second nature. Second nature means what? Means that when it comes to giving for the sake of God, when it comes to helping, they don't think twice. They don't hold themselves. It is part and parcel of their nature, of their character. Yes? They immediately give. Just like how, for example, sometimes you see someone like a family member in need and you quickly go to their help. You don't think twice, shall I help them or not? A child of yours or your parents. You immediately want to remedy their concerns and their situation. No doubt, this is an exceptional quality. Another one that Qanbar says I saw Amir al-Mu'mineen has is his humility, his tawadu. He says one day an individual came to visit Amir al-Mu'mineen in the house. When he was in the house, he was with his son, an elderly man with his son. So Amir al-Mu'mineen said to me, go and bring some food. I came to bring some food, to present this food to this man. He said he ate. When he finished, it was customary at that time for the servant to bring a bowl of water and to pour it so that they wash their hands. Amir al-Mu'mineen sees Qanbar trying to pour water for this elderly man. He takes the water from him and he pours it himself. That man looks at Amir al-Mu'mineen and says, Ya Ali, please, I don't want you to do this. This is not something that you should be doing. Amir al-Mu'mineen looks at him and says, why? I am not higher than you. Let me serve you. One of the characteristics of a man or a woman who understands tawadu' and humility is the desire to serve, not to be served. Our fourth Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, when he used to go to Hajj, he used to go from one caravan to another serving the Hujjaj so that he is not recognized. Because he found and he would want to establish the quality of servitude towards others as a hallmark of the people who are humble before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An-Nabi al-Akram wa Rasul al-A'zam Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam would say towards his companions, Mali la ara fi wujuhikum halawatul iman. Why is it that I don't see in your faces the sweetness of faith? They said, what is the sweetness of faith, Ya Rasulullah? How do you identify it? He says, at-tawadu, humility. That is how I understand the manifestations of faith, yes? And therefore, Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he did this, he said to Qanbar, but I want you to go and tell my son Muhammad ibn Hanafiya to go and wash the hands of his son. I would have done it, except because I want to honor the elderly. I want to honor those who are older. How beautiful is this sentence and statement. In this day and age, unfortunately, in some Western countries, what do we find? We find the values of our elders being lost, yes? We find sometimes what happens? That people are missing the respect that the elders in the community deserve. Meaning that I've heard of stories in the United Kingdom where sons and daughters, they are what? They are charging their parents when they come to stay with them, like a hotel. Or they place them in nursery homes even though they can look after them themselves. Or as we see in certain cartoons, like The Simpsons, we see what happens. The son calling his father by his first name, Homer, why don't you bring this? Yes? Whereas the religion of Islam teaches us honor and respect to the elders. Elders that have given so much in order for us to have a dignified life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless, for example, the elders of this community who established this particular Husayniyah, this place of worship, so that you can come, you can listen to the words of advice and remember God and worship God. They're the ones who laid the foundations, yes? They're the ones who facilitated what needs to be facilitated for you and I to be able to remember God and to honor the Ahl al-Bayt in the month of Ramadan and Muharram and other occasions, yes? And one way to honor them is to what? Is to keep engaging and to keep attending and to take part in programs, yes? Otherwise, if they've laid down these centers and people are saying, well, you know what, I'm not very interested, I have work, I have other commitments, I'm not keen to take part. We're not honoring their sacrifice, we're not honoring their dedication and their hard work to provide us with what is needed. You know, sometimes I go to certain parts in the United States and other countries, they don't have centers. They do in their own homes, or they hire out places. Alhamdulillah, that a community has a place to remember God, to pray to God, to remember the Ahl al-Bayt. And this place, by the way, if it's left deserted or only a few people attend, will complain on the day of judgment. The Prophet of Islam would say 3 will complain on the day of judgment: a place of worship that is empty, the Quran that is not recited, and a scholar that is not utilized. An alim who is not necessarily being benefited from. Yes. And indeed, you recognize that that is a key feature in a successful community. Qanbar says, I saw this: humility, number 1. Number 2, what else did I witness? Qanbar says, as far as the tawadu' of Amir al-Mu'mineen, I saw what? I saw that he would be an individual who would quickly want to forgive others. In which way? He says, one day a man comes from Sham. Amir al-Mu'mineen sees him. He says to him, what are you doing here? He was a stranger. He says, I'm looking for Ali ibn Abi Talib. He says to him, you found him. What do you want to do? He said, don't worry. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, I know what you want to do. This man said, do you really? He said, yes. Amir al-Mu'mineen said to him, shall I tell you? Qanbar says, I saw this. He narrates. He says, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, shall I tell you what you've come for? That man said, yes. He said, Muawiyah said, who will kill Ali? And I will give them 10,000 dinars. One person came, but then changed his mind. Muawiyah said, I will give 20,000. One person came, but then changed their mind. Then Muawiyah said, 30,000. You came, and you said to him, I will kill Ali ibn Abi Talib. Will you give me 30,000? He said, yes. Therefore, you have come to kill me. That man was astonished. He says, you are absolutely right. I've come to kill you. Imam said, then, here you go. Would you like to do it? And that man said, no, I'm okay. Then Imam alayhi salam said, oh Qanbar, bring food, bring clothing, give him shelter and let him go. If someone was to come to you and say, I want to kill you, the first thing you'd be doing is calling the cops and the police. Yes? You say, this person wants to kill me, no doubt, yes? Not only this, would you ever forgive them for that intention to want to kill you? Qanbar said, I saw the epitome of forgiveness from the commander of the faithful. I saw him demonstrating what he would preach, because Amir al-Mu'mineen would come forward and say what? He would say, Man tawadha'a fi dunya, whomsoever humbles themselves in this dunya, li ikhwanihi fahuwa inda Allahi min as-siddiqeen. If you humble yourself in this world towards your fellow human beings, then you are truly of the people of the servants of God. Yes? وَمِن شِيعَةِ عَلِيِّ ibn Abi Talib حَقًّا. You are truly of the followers and the Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He says, I saw this wonderful quality in this particular individual. Similarly, he narrates and says that not only did I see his humility and I recognized his forgiveness, but I saw his willingness to overlook what people say and his eagerness to serve. In a story that most of you are aware of, Qanbar says, we were walking in Kufa one day and we hear a lady in the house with the children crying. She's saying, Ya Allah, allow me to complain to Ali ibn Abi Talib, for he is the one who caused my husband to be killed. All of a sudden, Amir al-Mu'mineen knocks on the door. The lady opens the door, doesn't recognize him. Qanbar says, I saw Amir al-Mu'mineen speak to her. He said to her, oh lady, what is the problem? She said, my children are hungry. They are orphans and we have no food in the house. We are in desperate need. And I tried to quieten them by stirring the pot. It has nothing but water. But I'm trying to give them this false sense of food that exists. Amir al-Mu'mineen says to Qanbar, Qanbar, go and get some wheat and get some flour and dates. Qanbar goes and brings it. He says to the lady, Amir al-Mu'mineen says to the lady, what would you like me to do? Would you like me to prepare some bread, or would you like me to look after the children? One narration says, Amir al-Mu'mineen goes and prepares the bread and says this. He says, "Oh Ali, feel the heat of the fire in case anyone is unhappy with you." Other narration says, once he provided the bread towards these young orphans, he came and played with them, and he was Khalifatullah. He was the representative of Allah, and he played with the children. Qanbar was surprised. When Imam Ali left the house, Qanbar says, "Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I know you're a man of generosity." He knows. "I know you're a kind individual. I know why you fed them food, but I don't know why you played with them. Why did you play with the children?" Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says to him, "Qanbar, when I entered the house, they were crying. I wanted to leave the house, and they're happy and smiling." Look at the heart of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Look at the love he had for humanity, for individuals, for orphans, as he is, of course, the father of the orphans, no doubt. Yes. Qanbar says, "I recognized all these features as far as the morality of Amir al-Mu'mineen is concerned." Yes? And similarly, he said that one day, Amir al-Mu'mineen goes to the marketplace. He purchases a shirt, which is 3 dirhams. And he purchases another one, which is 2. He comes, he says to me, "Qanbar, take the shirt, which is 3. I said to him, "Mawla, I'll take the cheaper one." He said, "No, because I am embarrassed before Allah that I wear something more expensive than what you wear." Look at this individual and his worldview as far as what? As far as love and compassion towards others is concerned. Qanbar said, "I saw and I learned humility and morality from whom? From the commander of the faithful." That's the first area. The second area, justice, adala. And of course, one cannot be surprised that a man like a servant of Ali would speak about the adala of Amir al-Mu'mineen. When Amir al-Mu'mineen is the voice of human justice, isn't it? When non-Muslims like George Jordak would write his famous book, Ali, Sawtul Adalatul Insaniya, Ali, the voice of human justice. Because this individual, he is what? He's a Lebanese historian and a scholar, a non-Muslim Christian. He said, "One day I was told by my father, read this book, it will help you." I took this book, it was called The Peak of the Eloquence, Nahjul Balagha. He said, I had no idea who this Ali was. I sat next to a river, close to our village in Lebanon, and I began to read and read and read until I drowned in the sea of Nahjul Balagha. And I became mesmerized by it. When I became mesmerized by it, what happened? He said, I decided I need to write something. I need to author something about this man. I went to university, then later I came back to the same river and I started writing about the life of Ali ibn Abi Talib until he authored this book, The Voice of Human Justice. He says the first community that published this book was the Christian community. They paid for it. And then later he says, I came back to my village, I went to my house, and my father was a carpenter. So I entered the house and I saw that he'd carved something from wood right at the entrance of the house. I looked at it and it said what? La fata illa Ali, wa la sayfa illa dhul fiqar. There is no youth like Ali, there is no sword like dhul fiqar. No doubt, justice is synonymous with the word Ali ibn Abi Talib. Yet Qanbar says, I recognized in his life a number of important positions which highlighted emphasis that the Imam had upon justice. For example, he says at the time of the second Khalifa, what happened? There was once a lady who came to complain. She complained to the second Khalifa, Umar ibn al-Khattab, and said, there is a man who claims that I am his mother and I have nothing to do with him, I don't know him, and he is accusing me wrongly. Therefore you should punish him. So the second Khalifa said, do you have witnesses? She said, yes, my brothers. So her brothers came and testified that yes, we don't know this man. He is lying. He is claiming to be the son of our mother, and he is a liar. So all of a sudden, Umar said, very well, we will have to punish him because he is falsely alleging something. He was being taken to be punished. On the way, he saw the man that he needs to see to save him. He saw Amir al-Mu'mineen. He said to him, Ya Ali, I beg you, help me. He said, what is it? He said, I've been accused of lying, but I swear to Allah, she's my mother. And she is deceiving people. She doesn't want people to know I am her son. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, very well, come with me. He took him back. He went to where they were all gathered. He said to Umar ibn Khattab, he said to him, would you agree if I rule on this issue? The second Khalifa said yes. Because why? Because he himself says, لولا علي لهلك عمر. If it wasn't for Ali, Umar would have perished. So he recognized that Ali was the most just individual. So I said to him, you rule. Okay, very well. Amir al-Mu'mineen looks at this woman and says, do you swear by Allah that you're not his mother? She says, I swear by Allah. He said, do you swear? He looked at her sons, her brothers, and said, do you swear by Allah that this is not her son? He says, we swear by Allah. He says, very well. Qanbar came. He said, go home and get me some money. So Qanbar goes. Qanbar says, I got him some money. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, with this money, I am going to marry this lady with this man. And he pointed to that man who's saying, I am her son. Here you go. This is the dowry. I'm going to marry you both now. All of a sudden, that woman began to, become quite agitated and profusely sweating. Imam says, is everything okay? Are you happy for me to marry you to this man? She says, no. He says, why? He says, how can you marry me to my son? He says, why did you lie then? She said, Ya Ali, please forgive me. I am afraid to admit he's my son because he was a son before I had another husband, and therefore I didn't want anything to do with him. Yes? Qanbar said, I saw the wisdom of Ali ibn Abi Talib in administering justice in this way. Justice that you and I desire and yearn in in our lives. Similarly, he says one day Amir al-Mu'mineen was missing his shield, and he saw a Jewish man with his shield. He says to him, that's my shield. The man says, no, that's mine. He says, then very well, let's go to the Qadi, to the main ruler or the jurist at that time. By the way, Amir al-Mu'mineen was the Khalifa. He was the number one person in charge, the leader. Yet, he said, let's go to the person who deals with disputes. When he was taken towards this individual, and may Allah bless the ladies who take their children upstairs, please. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When he was taken to this jurist, what happens? He was taken with whom? With witnesses. Amir al-Mu'mineen took his son Hassan and his son Hussein alayhim salam and took Qanbar. And the Qadi Shurayh said to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he said to him, Ya Ali, who are your witnesses that this shield belongs to you? Amir al-Mu'mineen says, these two are my sons and this individual is my servant. They are witnesses that this belongs to me. Shurayh said, these two are your sons. We can't take their testimony because they're your sons. And this man is a slave. We can't take his testimony. Amir al-Mu'mineen looked at him and says, this man you call a slave, he is a just human being. And that's one of the best praise that Amir al-Mu'mineen gave to Qanbar. He says what he will say is truthful. Yet of course Shurayh would say, that's it. You don't have enough witnesses. The shield stays with that individual. That individual, the Jewish man looked at the shield. He was wondering what's going on. He is the leader of the Muslims. Yet Amir al-Mu'mineen says, fine, he can keep it. If that's the ruling, that's all. He walks away. That man calls him and says, Ya Ali, I have never seen justice like yours, that you are willing, even though that you know it's your shield, and that you are the caliph of the Muslims, and that you are the number one authority. Yet, even though this man ruled wrongly, you're willing to accept it, and you're willing for me to keep the shield. This is yours. Qanbar said, I indeed recognized the value of the adala of the commander of the faithful. My dear brothers and sisters, you and I, no doubt, are very much inspired by Amir al-Mu'mineen's life and especially his justice. Often we speak about the adala of the commander of the faithful. But we have to ask ourselves an important question. In my day-to-day life, what is the reflection of the justice of Ali to my transactions and the way I deal with other human beings? Meaning what? Please pay attention to this. In some occasions, when I deal with others, I deceive, I cheat, I manipulate because of worldly desires. Sometimes it's my own family members and sometimes it's my friends. Give you examples. Sometimes we have to intervene in disputes between people and they are blood relatives. For example, a father and the son, yes? Or he took away my money and he's not giving it back. Or the father has passed away and there is dispute amongst the sons due to their inheritance. And one is taking the other to court. Allahu Akbar. Because of a few dollars, they were to oppress the other. Sometimes some mu'mineen in the community, some brothers and sisters, they go and take a loan from someone. They give a piece of paper. Yes, I've taken that thousands of dollars from you. When it's come to time to pay it back, you ask them, what's going on? They say, oh, I don't think this or that. And they start to give excuses. Not saying genuinely that I may be struggling, please give me more time. They start to giving excuses. I remember dealing with a case in one of the countries. One brother took several £1,000 from another Muslim Shia brother. Yes? And he said to him, it's a loan. Yes? They took a piece of paper and they agreed. Later, when it was time to return it back, he came to him and said, okay, can you please give me my money back? He says, no, I didn't say it's a loan. I said it's an investment. So I put it in a business and it's all gone. But you said it's a loan. I remember. I would not have given it to you if it was investment. No. And they had to go to court, spend thousands of pounds until this brother who had given his money had enough evidence to prove that it was a loan and not an investment. But that individual who he had to take to court, a Shia Muslim brother, became bankrupt and had no money. So he lost his money. And we have many of these cases in society. We claim to love Amir al-Mu'mineen, but when push comes to shove, and sometimes there is temptation, and sometimes there is the eagerness and the love of materialism that supersedes our deeds and actions and our thoughts, not the principles of our Imam and our religion, which dictates that we must administer justice. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan. Allah says, I command you to be just. Be just with your family members. Be just with your neighbors. Be just with your colleagues at work. Be just with your friends. Be just with any other human being that you interact with. Be just with the government that has given you sanctity and safety, security. Be just with the government that has given you freedom of speech. In which way? Our scholars have said, abiding by the laws of the land is obligatory, number one. Deceiving the system is haram, number two. Meaning, I am filling out an application form for insurance. And I'm thinking, if I mention something, and if I play around with some words, I'll get a little bit more money. If I don't say the truth, I'll get a little bit more money. What happens? The scholar says the money that you get as a result of this is batil, is false, is haram wealth, which has disastrous consequences on our lives, on the families that we look after, yes? Such is the strictness with regards to the justice that Islam wants the human being, the believer, to administer, starting with themselves, following on to their family, or the community, as well as society. It takes it very, very seriously. And indeed, the more we pay attention to it, the more we are closer to illustrious individuals like Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Qanbar says, I saw this, but one of the administrations of justice, he says, was self-control at moments of temptation. So he says one day, Qanbar says, I was with Amir al-Mu'mineen and someone came and abused me and said bad words about me. And I was enraged with anger. I was about to reciprocate. I was about to say the same things to that person. When Imam saw me become more and more heated with anger, he said to me, Da' mahlan ya Qanbar. Oh Qanbar, wait, just listen. Da' shatimuk. Just leave the person who has abused you. Why? ترضي الرحمن وتسخط الشيطان. Because by doing this, you're going to please Allah and you're going to make the shaitan angry. He says, calm yourself. Don't go back and vent your anger on this individual. You will please Allah and make the shaitan furious with you. فَمَا أَرْضَى الْمُؤْمِنْ رَبَّهُ بِمِثْلِ الْحِلْمِ. Allah is not pleased with the believer like when they demonstrate forbearance. وَلَا أَسْخَطَ الشَّيْطَانِ بِمِثْلِ الصَّمْتِ. And shaitan is not angry except when we are quiet, when we can reciprocate, when we can go back and do exactly what someone has done to us. And you know, people around Amir al-Mu'mineen recognize this. You know the story of Malik al-Ashtar when he saw in the marketplace someone abuse him, yes? But he didn't say anything to him. And later someone said to that individual, this is Malik, the one of the close companions of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He runs to find him in the mosque performing salah. And he says to him, Malik, I'm sorry. He says, don't worry, I was performing ruk'atayn salah for your forgiveness. Not only will I not reciprocate, but I will pray to Allah to forgive you. That is the akhlaq of the followers of Ahl al-Bayt. That is the akhlaq of those who have associated themselves with this pure progeny, the progeny of Ali Muhammad, who the epitome of justice, of kindness, and indeed of generosity. But the third and all important quality that Qanbar says, I saw that Ali taught me and inculcated in my life, was the importance of the wilayah of Ahl al-Bayt. He says, one day we were walking and I entered the mosque and I saw a man praying, beautiful salah, he says. I saw this individual. And I said to the Imam, I said to him, how beautiful is this person's salah? It is mesmerizing, yes? And this is a narration from the 6th Imam in Bihar al-Anwar. Imam alayhi salam looks at Qanbar and says, Mah Qanbar, فوالله لرجل على يقين من ولايتنا أهل البيت خير من عبادة ألف سنة. The person who is fully convinced of our wilayah, the Ahl al-Bayt, their worship is greater than what? Somebody who worships for 1,000 years. Then the Imam quantifies the statement and says, وَلَوْ أَنَّ عَبْدًا عَبَدَ اللَّهَ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ لَا يُقْبَلْ مِنْهُ حَتَّى يَعْرِفْ وِلَايَتُنَا أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ. If an individual prays and performs worship of God for 1,000 years with genuine recognition and the opportunity to follow the Ahl al-Bayt, but they discard, Imam alayhi salam says, forget their prayers. And this is a very important concept found in our teachings, in our theology, in which way we are told that the wilayah is of great importance in the acceptance of our deeds. You say to me, how? I say to you, look at the 10th of Muharram. Look at the day of Saffin, yes? Look at these examples. There are people who prayed. There are people who read the Quran, but their leaders were corrupt. At the side of Muawiyah, the leaders were corrupt. At the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad and Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad and Yazid, yes? It is not about the salah and the Quran and the practice of the faith. It is about this under the direction of a leader chosen by God. That is the main principle under criteria that you and I need to understand. Yes. And that is why Qanbar says one day we had some guests with Amir al-Mu'mineen and he said to me, go and buy melons. So I went and bought melons, 3 melons. I bought them to Ali ibn Abi Talib. When he looked at the melon, he opened the first one, or I opened the first one and I gave it to him. He tasted it and said, that's bitter. Then the second melon, I tasted it and it was sour. The third melon had worms in it. So Amir al-Mu'mineen said to me, Qanbar, go back to the market and purchase 3 other melons, please. So he said, I went back to the market. I purchased 3 other melons. I brought them and Amir al-Mu'mineen opened the first one because I said to him, I can't open it. Maybe it's bad luck with me. Every time I open a melon, it doesn't come out good. So you open it, Ya Ali. Amir al-Mu'mineen cut the first one and it was sweet. So then he asks him, Qanbar asks him, what is this? Why 3 were sour, bitter and had worms and this one had sweetness to it? Qanbar is told by Amir al-Mu'mineen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presented our wilayah to all of His creation, amongst which there are some of His creation that rejected the wilayah. And that is why they're bitter, sour and had worms in it. This is a reality beyond some people's comprehension, yes? And he said some of the creation took our wilayah, and that is why they are sweet tasting, yes? This is a recognition. Qanbar says, one day I was with Amir al-Mu'mineen, we were in a place with Amir al-Mu'mineen wanted to swim. There was a water. He says he went there, he took off his shirt, and all of a sudden his shirt flew and Imam couldn't catch it. But then later he saw a sign from God. Another shirt had approached him. Qanbar says this is what narrated by Sheikh al-Saduq. Yes, Sheikh al-Saduq in his book Al-Khisal says, when this shirt came, Amir al-Mu'mineen took it. It had a note in it. Yes, in this shirt it had a note that says what? Hadiyatun min Allah al-Aziz al-Hakim ila Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is a gift from Allah towards Ali. هذا قميص هارون ابن عمران. This is the shirt of Harun, the brother of Musa. كذلك وأورثناها قوما آخرين. And he then ends this letter by saying Allah inherits it for others to take. And of course the Prophet would say to Amir al-Mu'mineen, أنت مني بمنزلة هارون من موسى إلا أنه لا نبي بعدي. You are to me what Aaron was to Moses, except that there is no prophet after me. And hence you recognize that Qanbar was a man who was truly loyal to Amir al-Mu'mineen and remained loyal to the Ahl al-Bayt. Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba, he was with him. Aba Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam, he was also with him. In which way was he with him? He was with him in a number of places. One narration says one individual one day knocks on the door and Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam says to Qanbar, Qanbar, go and open the door. And Qanbar opens the door and he says to Imam al-Husayn, there is a man who is a poor person. Please, he wants help. Imam al-Husayn says, very well, give him this money. Yes. And then all of a sudden, Imam alayhi salam, when he gives Qanbar this money, Qanbar presents it. This man says, can I want more? I want more. Imam al-Husayn comes and gives him more, but he doesn't look at him. Qanbar says to him, oh Imam, why are you not looking at him? Or why did you give the money just like this with your hand? He said, he came to me with full of dignity and he had the honor. I didn't want to look at him in case he feels ashamed. Qanbar says, I learned from Abu Abdullah this quality as far as giving charity to others. Yet people ask the question, where was Qanbar on the 10th of Muharram? Did he fight with Abu Abdullah on the day of Ashura or not? No doubt he was not there. Narrations don't tell us about the presence of this individual on the 10th on the plains of Karbala. Therefore, how can we explain his absence? The only way we can explain his absence is by recognizing that history is silent about it. It hasn't been narrated to us. But once we know his excellence, once we know he's been praised by Amir al-Mu'mineen and the Ahl al-Bayt, once we know how he left this world and how he was martyred, we can give him the benefit of the doubt. Either he was ill, or he was placed by Imam al-Husayn somewhere for a particular mission, or he was far away from Medina, he was not necessarily in Medina or Mecca with Abu Abdullah. Irrespective, there must be a reason why Qanbar missed being in Karbala, similar to Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, similar to Kumayl ibn Ziyad al-Nakha'i, similar to Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Tayyar, the husband of Sayyida Zainab salamullahi alayha. These are all individuals who are not there in Karbala, but they had genuine reasons not to be there fighting with Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. And indeed, we are told that Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi, he came forward. He said, I want to find anyone who associated himself with Abu Turab. Find me who is with Abu Turab. They said to him, there is a man who is still alive. He was one of the servants of Ali. He said, bring me him. They bought him, and it was Qanbar. Hajjaj looks at him and says, dissociate from the love of Ali. Qanbar said to him, no, this is my path and my Imam. I will continue on this. Hajjaj says to him, then you what? Then if you do not do so, you must dissociate from the religion of Ali. Qanbar said to him, give me a religion better than the religion of Ali and I will dissociate from it. Hajjaj says, then very well, I will end your life. Qanbar says, my master had told me that this will happen. And indeed, Al-Hajjaj would execute Qanbar at that particular juncture for him to be raised as a shaheed, as a martyr with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the path of wilayah, in the path of Amir al-Mu'mineen, in the path of the love of Ahl al-Bayt. And this is an important part of the life of these holy individuals. They recognize that their legacy will have to be associated as far as the glorious family of the Prophet is concerned. And no doubt, Qanbar was a man who was present on the final days of the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And how can he be missing when he served Amir al-Mu'mineen for the majority of his life? Yes. On the night of the 19th of the month of Ramadan, 40 years after the Hijrah, we are told that Amir al-Mu'mineen was a man who would be waiting for this day. How would he be waiting for this day? The narrations tell us when Rasulullah made his famous sermon on the final Friday of the month of Sha'ban, when he was asked by Amir al-Mu'mineen, what is the best deed to perform in this month? Amir al-Mu'mineen wants to know. Rasulullah would say, the best deed is al-wara' an maharimillah. Then Amir al-Mu'mineen would say, the Prophet was crying. I asked him, Ya Rasulullah, ma yubkik? Why are you crying, Ya Rasulullah? He says, because I can see that in this month, a month of Ramadan, your beard will be dyed with blood from your head. Amir al-Mu'mineen said to him, Ya Rasulullah, abi salamatin min dini? Will I be strong in my religion? The Prophet of Islam says yes. And that's why Amir al-Mu'mineen was waiting for this day. The day that the Prophet of Islam had predicted for him. And he would spend different nights with different members of his family. One night with his son Al-Hassan, the other with his son Al-Hussein, a third with his daughter Zainab. And on the night, like the night of the 19th, he was in the house of Kulthum, Radwanullahi ta'ala alayha. He was fasting. The time of iftar came. When he was presented with iftar, Kulthum presented him with yogurt, bread and some salt. He said to her, please remove one of them because I would like to meet Allah in the state of hunger. Kulthum said, I was surprised by this statement. I said to him, Abatah atan'i nafsak? Oh father, are you reading the eulogies for yourself? Amir al-Mu'mineen would then look up to the skies, would look up to the heavens. Ama wallah, hiya tilka al-layla التي وعدنيها حبيبي رسول الله. He says, it is that night, yes, I know, it is that night that my beloved Rasulullah promised me he would be looking left and right. He spent that night in ibadah, in salah, in siyam, in the remembrance of Allah, the qira'atul Quran, in salatul layl. He would not go to sleep for a long period of time. He would wake up and again look at the heavens, and he would say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma habbib ilayna liqa'ak, Allahumma habbib ilayna al-maut. Ya Allah, I want you to make the meeting with you something which is desirable, something which is loving. Kulthum would say, Abatah, what is happening tonight? Tell me what is going on tonight. Amir al-Mu'mineen would say to her, I just fell asleep and I saw my beloved Rasulullah, and he says to me, Ya Ali, come towards me, you are coming towards us very soon. At the time of Fajr, just before Fajr, Amir al-Mu'mineen wakes up. He goes towards the place to perform wudu. His daughter helps him perform the wudu. He performs the wudu, then he comes to the door. But there were some birds that began to flap. There were some birds that began to scream, and he recognized that the birds were saying, Ali, don't leave, please don't leave the house. His cloth got attached to some part of the wall. He says, everything wants to stop me from leaving the house. He leaves the house. He walks towards Masjid al-Kufa. He comes inside the masjid. He wants to recite the adhan. He begins to recite the adhan. It was the final time that the people of Kufa recited and heard the adhan of Amir al-Mu'mineen. When he said, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, people woke up for Fajr. This was the beautiful voice of Ali ibn Abi Talib. They were now used to the voice of Ali reciting adhan. When he would say, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, they would remember the time of Rasulullah. They would recognize there was no man close to Rasulullah like Ali ibn Abi Talib. He finished the adhan. He came down. He saw outside masjid a number of people asleep. He woke them up. Then he saw Al-La'in Abdul Rahman ibn Muljam. He saw him sleeping on his chest. He saw the sword that was drenched in poison for 3 days under his belly. He saw him in this state. He came to wake him up and said to him, don't sleep in this state. This is the way that the shaitan sleeps. Then he said, what are you about to do? You are about to do something that will shake the heavens and the earth. Then Amir al-Mu'mineen, ajarakum Allah, and tazda'a the Masjid al-Nabawi. These are moments that will break the heart of Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Ajarak Allah, ya Imam, ya Sahib al-Asr, ya Baqiyat Allah fi ardh. When Amir al-Mu'mineen came to perform his salah, Abdul Rahman ibn Muljam hid behind one of the pillars. Amir al-Mu'mineen began the salah, Allahu Akbar. He came and he recited. When he went into sajda, the first sajda he recited, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la wa bihamdih. He sat down. Abdul Rahman came and rushed. When Imam went into sajda for the second time, the La'in picked up the sword and he struck Amir al-Mu'mineen on his head. Allahu Akbar. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen cried out, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah, fustu wa rabbil Ka'bah. Jibreel could be heard in Kufa. Tahaddamat wallah arkan al-huda. انفصلت والله العروة الوثقى. قتل ابن عم المصطفى، قتل علي المرتضى، قتل سيد الأوصياء، قتله أشقى الأشقياء. Kufa erupted, people cried, they gathered next to the body of Ali ibn Abi Talib. His face was filled with his blood, it came all over his face. Allahu Akbar. The sword had split the head of Amir al-Mu'mineen. His family members, Imam al-Hasan and Hussein, they gathered around him. They tried to pick up his body, they tried to carry him. When they were close to his house, Ajarakum Allah, Amir al-Mu'mineen said to them, "Oh, my sons Hassan and Hussein, I ask you to leave me by myself." They said, "Why?" He said, "I don't want Zainab to see me in this state. I don't want Zainab to see me in this state. Allow me to walk towards the house." I say to him, "Sayyidi ya Ali ibn Abi Talib, you don't want Zainab to see you in this state. Ta'ala ma'i ila Karbala, Karbala al-Hussein." "Oh Imam, you don't want Zainab to see you in this state. But what did Zainab see on the plains of Karbala? ماذا رأت بنت أمير المؤمنين عندما صعدت على تلك القمة، صعدت على التل ورأت أخيها أبا عبد الله وصاحت: يا جدة، يا رسول الله، صلى عليك ملائكة السماء، هذا حسين بالرماء مخضب بالدماء مسلوب العمامة والرداء وبناتك سبايا. يا أمير المؤمنين, your daughter Zainab, what did she see? She saw Abu Abdullah alone on the plains of Karbala. Zainab صاحت: ألا منكم مسلم? Is there anyone amongst you who is Muslim? أجركم الله. يا أمير المؤمنين, you didn't want to see Zainab see you in this state, but she saw some shimmer صعد على جسد الحسين. كيف أو زينب كيف رأيت الشمر وهو يطعن أبا عبد الله؟